All right.
All right. You're listening to the Shuttlecock podcast. I'm Aaron Rhodes, and this week I'm here with Aaron Randle from the Kansas City Star. How you doing?
Aaron. How's it going, man?
The Aaron's meet. I'm doing good. First
off, you are a classy bitch with these San Pellegrinos, man. This is fantastic.
If anyone wants to send me a case, we'll give you a shout out on the podcast every week. So,
cheers.
You're a Kansas City native, correct?
That is correct. Born and raised.
And you went to Lincoln Prep for high school?
Yes, I have actually only been to like 3 schools in my life. I went to C.A. Franklin for preschool.
Let's start with that. How was your preschool,
actually,
Aaron?
It sucked, man. I'm still mad at Brittany Thompson. No, I'm just kidding. I went to 4 schools. C.A. Franklin for preschool, Benjamin Banneker for elementary, Lincoln Prep for middle and high, and Howard University in Washington, D.C. for college.
Awesome. And so did you do a lot of writing when you were going to high school and all that, or?
I actually did not. I did some. I just I tried journaling, but I wasn't consistent with it at all. It's kind of funny because I remember one time I only wrote really when I was mad, and my mom found my journal like 5 years after I left for high school, and she was like, "Yo, what the fuck? Like, it was really going in on me." But actually I just was really good. Or English came natural to me. I liked English and I liked writing reports, and it was really easy. So I always knew that writing was something that I enjoyed. And it wasn't until actually I was in yearbook. Shout out to Lacey Hill, yearbook teacher. And I started my side hustle in high school back in the ancient days was I would use LimeWire to burn CDs, and that was like my side hustle. And I was one of the few guys in school who had early on, 03, 04, who had a computer that could burn CDs and could do it fairly consistently. So that's relevant to my story because it kind of being the go-to guy for the CDs in the school, I was introduced to a lot of different music. And so that kind of really heightened my interest in music of all types, I guess you could say. And then when I paired that with the fact that I was pretty good at English and just writing in general, my yearbook teacher just one day says, well, you should work for Vibe. And she mentioned how magazine editors, her pitch was perfect. She was like, they know all the celebrities, they get to do all the cool shit, but they don't have the public burden, right? And the way she would say, she was like, I mean, I bet the editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone has everybody's in their cell phone, he's at their parties, rah, but he doesn't have to deal with the burden of fame, but he knows all the famous people who's around them doing that kind of thing. So that made me interested, I could do that. So then I was like, all right, so I started researching, and I kind of got into the idea of working for a magazine, and that influenced me to want to be a print journalism major at Howard University, which people kind of still wonder about because Mizzou's right in my backyard, #1 journalism school in the country. Why did you go there? But Howard, I had found in my research, had a really great, well, one, it was away from home. I wanted to go to the East Coast and just experience the East Coast. I've always been fascinated with the East Coast culture. It was on the East Coast in D.C., and I found that Howard had a definitive pipeline with Vibe magazine. A lot of their alums had written for Vibe or the place that I wanted to write for. So I thought, and it was one of the top communication schools in the country. So I thought, hey, they clearly know how to get me to Vibe. So this is before Vibe went under, and this is back when Vibe was still next to the Source. It was one of the rap hip hop Bibles.
And did you read it a lot growing up, or?
I did. Vibe was the go-to. This is before social media and all that. So when you really had to, rely on those beacons like Vibe and Source, that they were really just exalted, pieces of art, really. And then when you think about it, being in Kansas City, again, without the connecting powers of technology, Kansas City felt a world away from Vibe and all that they covered. This is before anybody of note would come here for a concert, or, most of your friends and family had never even been to or heard of been to New York. So, yeah.
And so what years were you in college?
I was a freshman in 2000, fall of '07. I graduated in 2011. And my first year of college, I didn't focus on an internship. My second year, I applied for a Vibe internship, which was dope. Got that. I'm literally, excuse me. I'm literally in the rooms with like Danielle Smith Wilson and these great writers I've looked up for a long time. Danielle Smith, who's now the culture editor at Undefeated. Sean Fennessy was there. He's the editor in chief of The Ringer, Bill Simmons' blog. Josen Cummings writes for Very Smart Brothers. He works for Twitter now. Like, there's a lot of names that I had really just looked up to. So I get in there, you know what I'm saying? I'm swagging out, doing good, you know, doing my thug. I'm the only guy from like Kansas City or anywhere like, I don't know, west of Atlanta in the intern pool, eating, you know, my popcorn and Jello every day because they didn't pay interns back then. And so I'm loving it. I'm swagging it out.
What kind of stuff were you writing there?
Well, we didn't write much because it was still Vibe, and again, Vibe wasn't trying to let no rookies write for their magazine, so to speak. I did a lot of transcribing. It is not easy to transcribe the RZA.
Yeah.
Just FYI, it's very hard. So I did a lot of transcribing, a lot of research. We were though the early social media team. Mm-hmm. That's what we did. We didn't get into the actual print publication, but we did the social media. So before like, you know, digital outreach was the thing, we were doing that. We were doing the tweets and we were doing the Facebook outreach and the Facebook postings and things of that nature.
It must have set you up pretty well for like some of the stuff you do now. So
yeah, it did. It did. It was great to have that introduction into just understanding the importance of digital early on. So a lot of transcribing, a lot of grunt work, but it was also great because Vibe was not just like the coffee internship. You know, like they wanted their interns produced every year this internal publication called Pulse magazine. So kind of like how Ink is the internal publication for the Kansas City Star, that's how Pulse was for Vibe. So they would literally, there's like an editorial intern team, a fashion intern team, you know, the research interns and so on. So they would literally put us in charge of producing like a mini magazine. So we had to go out and we had to like find our subjects, find our cover star, shoot the cover star with the photography interns. We had to lay it out with the art interns. Editorial interns had to actually write it, like the whole night. We had to put on like a release party. It was super, super dope. Mm-hmm. We were trying to get J. Cole. It's like, oh wait, you know, it's early. Like he was big enough for Pulse, well, small enough for Pulse, but also big enough to like be a cover star, but not quite get like prominent featuring Vibe yet. Yeah. This is like right before the come up. So yeah, that was all gravy until I go into Vibe one day and Vibe was shut down. I was actually there the day. Two cool days. Well, they're actually two horrible days, but it's interesting that I was there. The first time was when Michael Jackson died. That was strange because being at Vibe, which is a Quincy Jones publication, found out before everyone, and you can't say anything, but you like know it, and it was weird to see. It's just intense to see so many music obsessed people find out that the musician has died, and then just seeing. And it's also cool though to see like how the best music journalists in the world do their job when breaking news happens. Yeah. So I was there that day, and then a week later, we're in a meeting, one of our morning editorial meetings, and Danielle Smith is like, "Yeah, so this is all over. We're gonna go home." And interns are just like, "This is not a good joke. Like, I got shit to do." And then I look around, notice they're like editors like sniffling and crying. I'm like, wait, what the hell is going on, bro? Like what the fuck?
You said that was a week after Michael Jackson? It was a terrible week.
Rough fucking June, man. It's a rough June. And mind you, to get here, I had to like borrow money because again, I have no one in New York. So I'm in New York. I'm dead broke. I put everything I had in this internship. I'm eating popcorn and Jello. So she's like, yeah, it's over. And we're thinking it's like a joke. And I noticed that people are like crying. So interns realize this is real. Like, what the hell? And then as she says that, she's like, yeah, so we have to like pack up the office and get out. It's like a legitimate eviction. Like when these companies fold, they're treated like a delinquent tenant in a house, so to speak. Because literally these men in suits walked in looking like the IRS, men in black, and they were just watching over us as we packed. literally like 20 years of Vibe history in like 3 hours, which works out for me because I have things from the Vibe office that I just should not have. Like they have each of these each of the covers that they produce. They put them on this wall called the cover wall. I have like 4 of those. I have like the original Snoop cover, the TLC Firefighter cover.
And maybe you shouldn't be dropping this stuff.
I know, but I mean, if y'all ever
nobody's
come to
listening.
Kansas City,
No, you're good.
But yeah, no, it's crazy. So that was pretty intense. But then from there, luckily, I made a good impression on my intern. The head of interns, so she got me a job at BET.
Oh, that's great.
So I worked there, and then I did some internships at Team Epiphany, which is a PR company in New York. And yeah, that's my internship history, really.
Yeah, and all like the BET work and that stuff was that all still while you were in college?
Yes, BET was the same summer, so I spent like two weeks, crying and hating life for like doing all this to get to Vibe, and then I get there and the company goes under.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this sucks. But then my intern, she got me a job in July with BET, which was cool because I got to work in production or in development. So I got to see how they come up with the BET shows, and just I got kind of an inside look into TV production. That was super cool. That was my sophomore year. After my sophomore year of college, junior year of college, I did the Team Epiphany internship, which is a PR internship. The thought process being like, I need to have a skill set in PR and in editorial, or have some experience in both. And that was super cool, learning from Coltrane Curtis, who was like a visionary in marketing. And then senior year, I graduated, and I was a server and working in construction. I had like these odd jobs until about 2014. I really started to, because I actually wanted to do jobs that weren't in journalism at first because I was tired of being poor. Like, I just to be frank, like DC is really expensive, and I was just like, I wasn't in a rush to be a low paid journalist.
Yeah.
And so I found this construction job that paid me an insane amount of money and allowed me to like live good in DC. Like, yo, it was a life, bro. Like I'm 22. If I want to go out and get a drink and my homies came, it's like, I got you. I got enough money to like pay for the homies at the bar. It was a good time. But then eventually I realized that I might get comfortable in a job that's paying so well and so easy to work. So I thought I need to get back into journalism. So I started to send my resumes out. And like we all find, people somehow expect you to be entry level, but to have 10 years of experience, that dichotomy goes. So I was getting into like the final rounds of these various positions, editorial for Living Social, for the John F. Kennedy Center, trying to apply for all these jobs in DC. This wasn't working out. So I made the decision to move back to Kansas City. I figured if I will at least have the ability to, because in DC you don't have time to spend your days working or looking to find a job. It's so expensive. You have to work. I don't have time to send out resumes and to research and to find places to go. Yeah. So I have to be working, and that takes away my time that I can devote to finding an editorial job, a journalism job. But I figured in KC, I could, kick it at mom's crib for a little bit and spend that time really honing, trying to hone down or find a good job. Then I came here and made a few connections and started writing for the Kansas City Call was my first article, I believe, here. And I kind of used that from that point on as a stepping stone. I used the Call to get into the ink. And then I kind of like finessed that a little bit. It was only an ink article, but I would say it was for the Kansas City Star. Mm-hmm. So when I pitched myself to Ebony Magazine, and so I wouldn't say it was an ink article. I'd say it was a Kansas City Star article, and it was like, so it makes me look a little bit more accomplished than I actually was at the time. But that worked, like on Ebony Magazine. Then used Ebony to get into Complex, and just stepping stones until 2015 when I got hired as a temp at first off at the Kansas City Star. I'm sorry, 2016, last July, as a temp, and then I was brought on full time in about October.
Awesome. And wait, you said the Kansas City Call. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, that is our local Black newspaper. It is an institution. It is one of the first papers in the country to document lynchings. It was founded by C.A. Franklin, where I went for preschool, and it's home some great writers. I know, got his name, Roy something. He became a really famous writer, and Lucille Bluford, who the library on Soul Parkway named after, she was a pioneering journalist. So yeah, I wrote my first story for them, and I thank them for giving me my first chance because a lot of people were not looking at me.
What story was that?
It was a story on the Workhouse Castle over there on it's like 19th and Vine. It's like
the kind of the abandoned castle. Everybody spray paints and stuff.
Yeah. And so they were trying to a group of kids, including a friend of mine, Daniel Edwards. They were trying to revitalize it, and rehab it and make it a community workspace. And it actually became a pretty significant story. Like eventually, all of the news media in Kansas City would cover this story, but I think I broke it first for the Kansas City Call, and it was a front page story, and then they let me do a few other stories, and that was kind of like my first foot in the door. So I mean, I will always be thankful to the local Kansas City, the local black paper for giving me my first shot.
And so I think also you had told me before that while you were in college, you had also worked on like an MP3 blog with some of your friends. What was the name of that?
Yeah. Shout out to Mesh Life.
Mesh Life.
It was such a silly name. Music Edge Style Heaven. It was the acronym.
Edge.
I know. It's like we just thought we were so clever. It's like a music blog. We were edgy. We did style.
Do you like hashtag everything? Hashtag Mesh Life?
Like it was like a thing, bro. Yeah. Like it was on the early onset of like blogging. So like in Howard, like it was lit. And then like people that I ran it with, they were super cool. Like my girl Aisha, she's just popping on campus in an AKA in the sorority. And then my boy CJ is just this little fly guy on campus. So like we threw like a back to school party one time that was crazy lit. And back in those days, again, like you hadn't, I sound like I'm old. I'm not that old, y'all, back in those days. But like it's like 09. So like you don't really have, like, think about how fast technology is, right? Like, you don't really have all those blogs to get whatever you want. You don't have a phone. You just hear whatever song you want to hear right now. You really relied on those handful of blogs that you trusted to kind of let you know what was going on, what was hot, music-wise, fashion-wise, culture-wise. And at Howard, at least, that was one of the blogs that thankfully became really popular, and we won some Black Weblog awards for it. It was really cool, but it was my first really introduction into consistent music journalism, because I did like reviews and things like that on there.
Yeah, and what were some of the artists and stuff that you were into?
Well, man, of course, Drake. This is like 09. This is like right.
Yeah, so you're early J. Cole.
Yeah, I was on it before he was hot. You feel me? No, but Drake and obviously J. Cole. I was really, really big on J. Cole, especially early on. Like, we used to have like J. Cole days. Like, I mean, Friday Night Lights was like one of our highest traffic days ever when that dropped. It spanned, man. We did Wiz, early Wiz, Cushion OJ Wiz. Like we dropped that. That was a big day for us. Bad Boy actually shut us down one day because we got a hold, because we were really adamant about we did not care about like dropping links to songs and copyrights. We just did whatever. Yeah. And one day we dropped like a Diddy Dirty Money track. No bueno. Bad Boy definitely shut our ass down for like 2 days. That was wild. But yeah, like Kids in the Hall, like early Backpack era stuff. But we actually covered artists. What worked about Mesh is that our tastes were so different. Like I really, my base, I've always known R&B more than hip hop early on because my parents are older, and that's just kind of like my base. I really wasn't allowed to listen to like a lot of rap for real. But like my homegirl Aisha, she's from Florida. She knows Biggie and East Coast rap like crazy, but she's also like this just popping pretty girl. So she got the pop on lock. And you got CJ, who is so eclectic. He knew R&B and rap and jazz and all that. So I say that to say that like it was all over the place. Like we covered Frank Ocean back when his name was Lonnie Bro, which I didn't even realize until a few years ago. So we had like Lonnie Bro on there, Frank Ocean, early Weekend. I mean, everything, man. Trey Songz, just everything anything that we thought was popular or that people our age wanted to get in on, we really latched onto it. We latched onto Nicki Minaj early on because she was really blowing up and bubbling at that time. So I mean, it was just it proved really useful because it taught me, one, how to kind of research and go out there and see what's hot and how to gauge what's hot. And it taught me, just how to interact and engage with a digital audience. It taught me, just the work ethic that's needed, I think, as a journalist to blog every day. Like, we never took a day off. We posted something all the time. That's important. Like, just small things that I realize now that we're in such a digitally driven world is super, super important.
And you kind of referred to it as a Howard blog, I guess, because all of you were attending Howard at the time. But would you say that it was a common thing for like different universities to have their own like set of like music blogs or fashion blogs and stuff, or do you think you guys are kind of unique in that?
I don't want to say that no one else did it, but I noticed that we got a lot of input from other colleges who we kind of became the go-to. Like, we got a lot of regional hits. I mean, not just from like DC, from all over the country. And I don't think it's the fact, like, we weren't the only ones doing it. No, like, I won't ever say that. But I do think that we were early on to the blog game. We started in 2008. We were definitely like a novel thing. Like, people were still understanding Twitter and understanding the tech world, so to speak. So the concept of like starting a blog wasn't as easy as it is today, or didn't feel as easy. I mean, it was the same as it is today, but it just felt like, oh, blog, that's like, I guess today you can compare it to, say, like coding. Like, people felt like it was harder or more difficult than it actually was, which kind of created some apprehension. So it wasn't as many to choose from, which worked in our advantage because it's like you kind of had to come to us. But I would say by the time we kind of ended in 2011, 2010, the market had exploded. Like, it was tons of blogs everywhere.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Fake Shore Drive at this point out of Chicago, I'm pretty sure they're at 10 years right now. So I'm guessing they started at like 06, 07. So yeah, 08 would still kind of make you guys pretty early in the game.
It's interesting because I don't really think about it I haven't really thought about it in like a revisionist way, but when we were starting, that's how I like got onto a lot of these blogs, and people who have moved on from blogs now to doing bigger things, like Two Dope Boys, Fake Shore Drive. You heard that new. It wasn't Rap Radar then. No. I remember when Rap Radar started in 2009. Like, these early just beacons of like digital production, and just seeing these early. Just the onslaught of the importance of the blogger. I was kind of there for the beginning of that. Never became as big as them, but it was cool to just kind of, see and to be a part of.
And so, yeah, what were some of your favorite like articles that you got to do for like Complex or Ebony and some of those other places that you did while you were in college still? Or like right after?
I think I really I enjoyed The Root a lot because The Root allowed me to be a cultural critic, as so many people like to call themselves nowadays. And I don't say that in a shady way. I feel like I wasn't qualified to be one, but I'm glad that they gave me that platform to kind of just, explore that intersection of pop culture and race, or pop culture and just these other cultural linchpins, right? So yeah, I would intersect sports and culture, and I would do like TV reviews for The Root, or I would, dissect why before the Migos were popping, I would be, when people were trying to disparage them as like just another Southern rap group, I would say like, yo, like, you can chew bubblegum and walk. You can like Migos and still, like K-Dot, like Kendrick Lamar. And then talking about like the sexism that Nicki Minaj explored. I did a story on that about how she faces the backlash when she makes a song like Anaconda, as opposed to if a guy does a similar song. You know what I'm saying? So I value The Root for that. I would think one of my first breakout stories, ironically, came in sports. I wrote for Complex. I did a column about 2 years ago where I just was like, yo, Serena Williams is not only the greatest tennis player of all time, she's probably the greatest athlete of all time, sports person of all time.
Yeah, I remember like even before I met you like early last year, I think, but I remember just seeing that headline from Complex, or was it Complex? Like even before I'd met you, so and like how like that article blew up, so that was pretty.
Yeah, it
cool.
was wild. I really had no idea, and I have to credit that in many ways because I don't think Complex had an idea it would be that big either as far as page views and reach and engagement, because after that they actually really worked to give me more opportunities, which led to one of my pieces that I'm most proud of. I profiled Johnetta Elzie, who's one of the Ferguson protesters. She's like, everyone knows DeRay with his blue vest, but she's like the woman beside him who has done just as much, if not more, for the protest. But for a myriad of reasons, she was never really given his platform. So it was cool to tell her story. Locally for Inc., I mean, I love that I got to cover C-Dot and Carrington Harrison and Danny Parkins and their story over on 610. They're two 610 radio hosts. That was cool. That was one of my first cover stories. And then, of course, my feature on Rory Fresco, that was super cool. Just, playing a role in kind of getting him a little bit of shine in the local scene. And then also was a really good article for me. I think Was ended up being like one of the Ink's highest selling covers for that year. So that was really cool too.
Oh yeah, and so I guess that kind of brings us to when you're back in Kansas City here and writing for Ink and the Star and everything. But first, I want to so you said you had kind of grown up a little more of an R&B guy than a hip hop guy, but do you have any personal experiences with like Kansas City hip hop or R&B like before you left for college?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and let me clarify that. I guess I knew hip hop, like I loved rap. It was just like, I learned a lot more about like Hove or Biggie after going to college and being around that East Coast culture. I knew, if it was on the radio, I knew it, and just doing the CD burning helped me get an introduction to rap. But I knew like R&B the back of my hand because if I'm riding in the car with my mom, and my dad, they're not playing Ready to Die. They're playing whatever they're listening to. Yeah. But what was the question?
Like your experiences with Kansas City hip hop and R&B before you left.
I had a casual. I'll say a casual experience. Like like Fat Tone, Rich the Factor. Those early kind of guys, like I knew the Stick Up Kid like front to back. Rich the Factor, I was familiar with them, so I was really familiar with KC rap, but I didn't really get tethered to it as much. Like I know a lot of people, and I think it's great about Kansas City. A lot of people here are really loyal to the regional KC sound of rap or what it was in that time. But I really just I had artists that I liked, but I didn't really like study it. Until I came back, and that was in 2015. And when I came back, I just kind of, I kept a casual knowledge of like, G Watts, and I heard about Dom Chronicles and a few guys on the Caviar label, especially like Riley. He's a friend of mine. I'm really close with his sister as well. So like I had been kind of hearing about what they were doing in the town, and then partly through meeting you introduced me to kind of other artists, and I kind of fell down, I like to call it the SoundCloud rabbit hole. Yeah. And so, it's been really cool to see the evolution of Kansas City hip hop from what it was, 10 years ago to what it is now. Mm.
Yeah, and what were some of the, like what made you finally decide that you wanted to write so if anyone's not familiar, Aaron wrote what was the headline? It was like 8 Kansas City rappers that might.
It's like KC's new wave of hip hop, something like that.
So, and that included Aaron Alexander, Rory Fresco, AL, Kai Colors. Did I say Aaron Alexander?
Caviar, Detza.
Yeah, Riley and City Watson, Detza. I think, man, I'm sorry. Zarin. And so you did like a mini profile on each of those guys. You filmed a freestyle of each of them, and then you did one big cypher video that you filmed in like the art, like the
art alley.
Yeah, the art alley.
18th Street, yeah.
And so that was a really cool project, and you ended up winning. What was the name of the award for that? It's like a Features Society.
Yeah, Society of Feature Journalism. I just won an award for visual storytelling for that, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. So when did you really decide that you had wanted to do an article like that?
I think once I listened to all of the music coming out and realized that, this is pretty good, and it's music that I could take elsewhere as in outside of Kansas City, and people would really people responded really effectively towards it. I think the first inkling in my head came when Rory found his success and just seeing like how people reacted globally. And then from there on, I like fed a few Rory tracks to some of I'm in this hip hop group with some of my friends from college. I would feed them like Rory tracks or just random stuff I'd find on SoundCloud. And they was like, this isn't bad, And I realized that for the first time, in my opinion, Kansas City rap had a sound and a capability to go outside of just Kansas and Missouri, or just region. I feel like it felt bigger, it felt more global, it felt more universal, and I thought that in a way that was a metaphor for the city itself, right? Like the city is becoming more universal and more global. We're finding we're redefining who we are, right? So I just kind of borrowing from what Double XL does, just looking at who's the hottest. I'm not saying that these guys were the hottest or the best. I just, from my vantage point, they were 8 strong representations of not only Kansas City's new style of hip hop, but it also was a representation of the breadth of it, right? Because like Aaron Alexander is not like Riley, who is not like Detza, who is not like Rory, who isn't like AL. They were all very different. And it was really tough to hone down to those 8. I mean, I could have easily made it 15, 20. But in the end, I think that it accomplished what it needed to, which was just to show people that, like, Kansas City has the potential to really make its mark, I think, in music.
And so that was just like from what I understand, like a pretty grueling process in itself to just wrangle all of these artists and film these videos and everything. But
musicians are the worst. Where's the camera? They're the worst. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was cool. I think in the end, because I was so passionate about it. It's always nice to write about something that you're passionate about. But yeah, the first hurdle that I encountered that was really taxing was just, like I said, the SoundCloud rabbit hole, because I would listen like to Detza, and I would find my way to Dame, and then I'd find my way to like Super Shack, and then I'd find my way to Cuddy Bear, and then I'd find I literally like a lot of these artists, some of whom even were like not fucking with the article or like throwing shade on social media. Like they were really close to like being in the article. I just couldn't, I can't, the Star won't give me 15 pages to do a rap feature. Yeah. I can only choose 8. But that was the first thing, was just kind of like listening and deciding like, dang, who do I want to give this look to? And in a way it was daunting because I felt almost like the task was too big for me. Like, who am I to just, decide to expose to, the Star's millions of readers a week, which is basically what we have. But
But in the end, it's better to do it than to not and worry about who you're excluding.
Absolutely. So I got over that pretty quick. But at first, it was something that I dealt with, just the hours of listening to all these guys. And there were factors that went into it, right? I took into account, like, if I'm going to say that you're ready to take us to the next level, you have to show me that, right? There were guys who I would have used, but they hadn't released music in the last 5 months. There were guys who had no social media presence or had no concept of branding and there were guys who seemed like, yeah, they're good at rap, but it seemed like it wasn't, like it was their secondary thing. And it was like, I can't say that you're, serious about this and your last song was made 8 months before I'm doing the feature. And those are things that kind of went into my decision making. And I'm like, well, when they have music videos, are the videos good? The music, is it mastered? Is it mixed well? Like, there were just small things that I think I had to look at to kind of make that decision. And in the end, that's why I feel, to this day, I feel pretty confident in who I chose. But as far as that, after that, it was not so hard wrangling the guys, getting them in there to do the freestyles. There were some snafus, but nothing outside the norm that you go through when you're putting together a feature like this for any kind of publication.
Yeah, and like maybe I just don't follow the Star as closely as I should, but like it seemed like to be one of like the biggest, like most dynamic like projects that I've seen the Star do in recent years. So that was really exciting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Star is obviously one of the best dailies in the nation, and that's not even just bias. It's kind of a fact. But they like many of the best papers in the nation, newspapers, they make their bones on local coverage, news coverage, hard news, asking the tough questions and looking at these really serious topics. Features. In most newspapers, which I was a features reporter, features is like the redheaded stepchild, like we do, the entertainment, the TV reviews, the celeb interviews, and that's front and center in magazines and on blogs. That's great, but unless it's like the Times, New York Times, or like somebody like Chicago or something like that, they're not really, the music critics and all that. They aren't on the same hill with the same esteem as like the news, the hard news reporters. So as far as like devoting that kind of time to a music feature, and then that feature being rap, that absolutely was, I believe, I know to be a very unique and rare thing for the paper, which is also why I think it did so well, because people were excited to see something fresh and a novel concept, in the local paper, and that's what I hope to bring. I want to expose and tell the stories that I think sometimes get lost or get untold. And it wouldn't have been right with all the work that our local artists are doing to not highlight that and to not celebrate it. It's a disservice for us not to do that. So I'm just really proud that we were able to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and like you were telling me before that like some of these artists have seen like a really good boost from it, and like it did really well, like by the paper standards. So
yeah. The engagement was good, like for sure, and it's important because right, if it doesn't do well metrically and make the paper money, they wouldn't do it again. But it did well for the paper. The engagement was really good. It won them actual awards, which is always nice. There have been some artists who I know have found, new audiences and new opportunities through that work. And at least one artist I know who has been contacted by record labels off of directly because of the feature. Like Warner and Priority hit me like, we saw this feature and saw this artist. Can we talk to him? So I'm just glad that, it wasn't in vain.
Mm. And so do you think you keep up with all these artists pretty well? And like,
yeah, I do. They probably think I don't, because like they'll text me sometimes, and like I don't text back for like a day or two. That's not nothing personal. But yeah, I do keep up with them. I enjoyed Roy's work. I really like AL, and I'm waiting on his new tape to drop, which I hear he's dropping pretty soon. I am not the best with keeping up on everybody, but I do keep my tabs. I know Memento Mori. I've heard great things. I'm really excited to go to Aaron Alexander's listening party. Riley has just, he's probably one of the most, he's impressed me the most, like with just his renewed commitment to his craft has really hit a new stride, I think.
Yeah, he's
and
pushing his music really hard this year.
Yeah, I'm really vibing with him. So yeah, I keep up with him. I try to stick my head back in from time to time.
Like, I know you're kind of on a somewhat different beat at this point at the paper, but do you see yourself doing a similar project in the future?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I have a new job that is more. It's less entertainment, less features. I know I did a lot of concert reviews, music reviews, features that focused on entertainment topics. My new role is very different, and the way I was kind of explained, I was kind of told by the head honchos was, if I can accomplish what I have to with my actual new job, my new role as a reporter. I'm an enterprise reporter now, which essentially means I have to. I look at topics in our city that typically divide us, and I explore those divisions, whether it's race or orientation or the Kansas versus Missouri divide or social class, just things that so that's my job now, so kind of look at those kind of topics and explore those. So it's a little more serious. It's less like, American Ninja Warrior and Easter Bunnies on the Plaza or whatnot. But yeah, I do hope that sometimes I can squeeze in another feature, because I would really love to highlight a new level of artists. I love to learn about, the women on our scene. I love to explore the R&B a little bit more. There's a lot of potential out there for more features, and I hope that I can get some in there eventually.
And so, let's jump into the first article that you did as a part of this new kind of series you're doing. Was it talked about racism in Kansas City's nightlife scene, right? Yeah.
Again, like, I'm an enterprise reporter, and in enterprise journalism, it's basically kind of journalism. You usually kind of report the news, right? You report off of what has happened, or you're going off like a press release. Like, you're kind of you kind of let the world dictate the story. But as an enterprise journalist, your job is kind of to use your knowledge of a subject to kind of figure out what needs to be told. And so in my role as a Kansas City native, the Star kind of has told me, like, look, people around here, communities around here, find out what's important to them, find out what's causing the divide, what's causing friction in our communities, what are those topics, look at them, explore them, and let's start conversations, and let's hope to bring change. And so for my first project, as a native of this city, as a Black millennial, I knew that there was a very real tension between Black millennials and how they felt Kansas City's social scene was to them. They felt that they were tolerated. That line that we use in the story is that they're tolerated, not really welcome. And this has been an ongoing story I've always heard, off the record and on the record. Like, people feel like Kansas City doesn't do a good enough job in being inclusive and embracing an array of cultures. And that's really important as this city wants to continue to grow and be that world-class city, right? Like, we love to share those travel magazine millennial hotspot. This is the new hot city.
Like, the New York Times writer went and got Casey Joe's. Nice.
Right. We have such this civic pride about our city, right? But the reality is that we have a long way to go, and one way that we needed to improve, and quickly, was in how millennials of color feel, because let's face it, what's millennials value inclusivity. We don't like to be, put into a box, right? Like when you go out, I mean, look at you, Aaron. Like you cover punk rock, as much as you cover rap, as much as you cover, traditional rock. Like you're not just put into one box. And when you go out, like how often are you going out and like you just going out with all white people, all straight people, all black people? Like, but Kansas City, I think. And I think that what you do is reflective of millennials in general. Like we're not trying to be.
Yeah, they're not afraid to explore like a different culture or a different social scene.
Absolutely. So I mean, when you go out, and then in these cities like not even I don't want to keep using like L.A. and New York because those are such bigger cities, but even like Memphis.
Was it good like that in D.C.?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you, bro, you shouldn't be going out to a club and you don't hear Bodak Yellow. Your opinion of Cardi B aside, it's the number one song in the country.
It's a great song.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And it is a great song produced by a Kansas City producer. Shout out to Jay White. But
yeah, you interviewed him the other day, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
That's good.
But like you shouldn't go to a top 40 club and conveniently, even though 20 of the top 40 songs in the country right now are made by black artists, you hear none of them. Like that is a systemic that's a systemic effort to exclude a certain people or a certain element.
Yeah.
And I found that was happening all over the city. And I found that the Star or no other media had rarely done an adequate enough job of calling out these people and saying, hey, like, this is wrong. And it's more than just nightclubs. I hope to say that in the story. Like, millennials, you're going to stay in a city if you feel like you can find a community to foster you,
yeah.
And camaraderie. And if you're black in Kansas City, there are a black professional. There are so few spaces where we feel like you can go, whether it be a lounge or just like a bar or a nightclub. There are so few spaces that feel like they were made not necessarily with us in mind, but that they work to really welcome us.
Yeah.
And I think that that is validated when I talk to these millennials from other cities who were saying like, yeah, like I come here and I go out and I get tired of hearing EDM. Like I don't know where the black coffee shop is. I don't know where this the happy hours ain't happen like they do in DC or the brunches aren't happening like they do in Memphis or Houston. And that lack of bigness, that lack of inclusivity, it makes people want to move away. So in the end, this is not just me complaining or black folks complaining for black folks' sake. This hurts your city because millennials who could otherwise contribute and help grow the prestige of your city, they leave for other cities that they think are doing it better than you are.
And so, like anyone who does any sort of reading about Kansas City, like just news in general, knows like the Power and Light District's history of racism and it's like
right.
how it's pretty overt.
Right.
But some of your article kind of tackles like Westport and how like that's not even as talked about of a thing, but like there are these restaurants and like in bars and clubs in Westport that do things to like not welcome black crowds.
Yeah, and we made the decision to go with Westport because, to be honest, Westport is the best option we have. And I'm saying, so we kind of showing like, this is the best of a bad situation. Well, this is the best that we have, and it's still chock full of problematic practices, right? Yeah. So it's like, well, this is Westport, which is where we all go. Imagine what the Crossroads is like, or Waldo, or God forbid, Power and Light, which people don't even bother to go to anymore. If you're like from Kansas City. And that's kind of why I chose to kind of hone in on Westport. It's kind of sucks for them because like they are, like I said, they're doing the best job. But I think it's powerful to show that, look, this is the best place to go, and it still has people who say like, yeah, bro, sometimes I don't play rap music because I just don't want those people there. Like, it's everywhere. It's rampant in our city. And I just hope that it started the conversation, got people to realize that like it is happening and that it does matter to people.
Yeah,
it is happening.
You can't let those people just feel comfortable doing those things. So
that's what I found that's happened. I was surprised, bro, when I wrote that story, how many people had such concrete evidence. Like not even just like it happened to me, but like, oh yeah, bro, I'm a DJ. I got an email from a promoter or a club owner saying, nah, you don't get to play that. Or yeah, bro, like this owner of this restaurant just in front of me said he didn't want my business. Like it was so many concrete and concrete instances of it happening. It was so widespread. It was kind of mind blowing to just know that we had allowed so many people who knew better to operate the way that they had been operating. So I'm just glad that I could kind of shed a little bit of light on that.
And something that you also touched on in the article was like you were at the shooting that happened at California's, right?
Yes, I was.
So, and California's had kind of recently become a more welcoming spot. Like it had like the brunch, like the Sunday recovery things where
and that's what and again I want to say, this isn't like a black problem, right? Like I think people sometimes feel like it's just pertaining to one race, but you know, hip hop culture, black culture is pop culture now. You know, like we have our tentacles in every aspect of cultural phenoms nowadays, because like rap music is pop music now. You know, it's not that sequestered element, right? So yeah, I say that to say I enjoyed recovery because I felt like everyone enjoyed recovery. You know, recovery had white people coming, loving it, Asians loving it, gay, straight, loving it, black, loving it. And that to me, like I would Snapchat recovery and people will be like, yo, you went out of town? Or yo, you in my city? And they're like in Houston. I'm like, no, I'm in Kansas City. They're like, what? Like, and in a way that's cool, but in another way it's kind of, and the people from Kansas City would be like, yo, you left town? And that was crazy to know that people in Kansas City felt like, yo, this looks too good to be Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, recovery was one of the highlights, an example of I think what Kansas City can become, and a reason it actually ended up being in that tragedy the catalyst for this story, because in the aftermath of the shooting, which was particularly crazy for me, not in the fact that the tragedy hit me more so than anyone else. I will never make that assumption, but crazy in the fact that I kind of went from a civilian to a reporter, you know, in a time that I wasn't expecting to do that, and two, in like the worst situation possible. But literally, as you know, Thomas is fighting for his life and there's chaos going around and people are kind of figuring out what's going on, you have people who are like, damn, like we had a great thing and we're going to lose it. And that really struck me that like in the face of abject tragedy, you're already worried about how Kansas City will treat parties that look like that one. And you're keenly aware of the reality that they will probably use this as an example as to why you shouldn't be allowed in these spaces, right? And that struck me to realize that, yo, this is such a topic that people are so aware of and that they have so much anxiety around that even as someone literally is dying, they're in the back of their head, they're thinking about the implications of what it will mean as far as our social scene. And so that's kind of what kind of inspired me to be like, yo, this has to be covered, especially with the backdrop of what happened at California's.
And what kind of reaction have you received from the article, and like where do you really see the situation moving from here?
The reaction was tremendous, man. I knew it would be considerable. I didn't know how big it would be. I think it's the biggest story of my career so far, especially with like page views and engagement. Reactions ran, I mean, of course, the gamut. Like I had lots of black people, majority black people, who said like, this is exactly what I needed to be said. Thank you. Like, I mean, I had people my age, people younger than me, in like just fresh out of college. I had ladies, parents 70 years old, calling me at my job and saying, yo, I had this same conversation with my frustrated son 30 years ago. Like, this has been a problem that young black people have had in this city for years. I also have black people that said, "Hey, I mean, I don't think it's that bad." They were in the very, very low minority, but they were there. I had white people who were, or I'll just say those other than black, because it wasn't just like white. It was some whites, it was Asians, Latinos who were saying like, "Yo, I had no clue that it was like this was an issue, and thank you for opening my eyes to it." And I had a considerable amount of white people who just said like, "This is not an issue. One, we're super diverse. Two, this is silly to think about, to even consider writing this big story on social scenes and nightclubs. Like, that's not important. Like, what was the Kansas City Star doing?" And then I had people who were just saying like, I was essentially race baiting and creating division and creating a problem. And so literally from both sides, I saw a range of responses.
And yeah, so then that the recovery is kind of left without a home right now too. And
well, yeah, well, as of right now, they did make the decision to kind of like take a break.
Yeah.
But Terry Burns, who is a great man, the owner of Californo's, and I celebrate him just for being one of the few businesses in Westport that was unashamed and unabashed with his support of letting black promoters throw a party that centered hip hop in Westport on a Sunday. Like, that was cool. He last I heard, he was still open to the idea. Like, he doesn't want to do what so many do, which is paint with a broad brush. He doesn't want to say, well, happen once, it's just going to happen all the time. I mean, there are things that they want to change. There are things they'll obviously have to take more precautions moving forward. But from what I understand, there is interest to continue recovery. I don't know if it'll be at Californo's. I don't know if it'll be a partnership between Mr. Burns and Quentin and Josh, the guys that threw the party. But I do know that recovery, I don't know that it'll be called recovery, but I do know that a party like that with the same kind of aim will be back. It's not dead per se.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, it's been awesome to have you on. Where can people follow you, and what do you have? Like, is there anything coming up that people should look for?
Follow me on Twitter, Aaron Randle. It's AARONRONEL. Yeah, just look out for me on, on the Kansas City Star, kansascity.com. I have a story today, actually, that dropped. It's going to be tackling gentrification. So, again, looking at topics that kind of, explore tensions in our community and, just want to create a conversation. But, yeah, man, just look me up on Twitter and say hi, shoot me a shout, shoot me an email. My email is at the bottom of all my articles. Yeah, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. And people can visit shuttlecockmusic.com and follow at shuttlecockmag.
Shuttlecock.
And there's a store on shuttlecockmusic.com. So if you want to support, that's the best way to do it. You can get a shirt or a button. And listen to the ADD podcast with Jason Barr. And I think that's it for this week. Thanks for coming on.